Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with a Giallo review. I know I've been going back and forth between American slashers and Italian films, and I've been doing quite a few slashers lately. So I figured I'd revisit a Giallo I haven't seen in a long time, and that is Lucio Fulci's Don't Torture a Duckling. Sort of a weird title. From 1972. And first off, if you see me sniffling or wiping my nose a lot, it's because it's been raining like crazy here, and we finally got some sun and humidity, and the pollen has been insane. My allergies are not liking it. So that's why. But anyway, so Don't Torture a Duckling is one of Fulci's Giallos. And even on the front, one of Lucio Fulci's best films and a superb Giallo, Dario Argento. And I would say Argento is the king of Giallos, even over Fulci. But Fulci has better gore films, I will say that. So that's got to tell you how good this is. And I really do enjoy this. It's a little hard to follow, because it does take place in Italy. They do all have Italian names. I'm probably going to forget some names, even though I literally just got done watching it. It's actually paused on the end credits right now. I'm terrible with foreign names. But basically, the story is there's this small village in southern Italy where sort of Catholicism rules, and these young boys are turning up dead. And it's just sort of local law enforcement's trying to find out who it is, even though the whole town, the whole village is sort of built upon superstition. And that's it. Reason why it's kind of convoluted is because one thing Giallo films does is it creates a lot of red herrings. And there's several in this. I mean, right off the bat, we see this woman. I think her name was like Maracha. She's played by Florinda Balkan, who was in another Fulci Giallo the year before this, Lizard in a Woman's Skin, which I used to own. I think that was one of the ones that was stolen, along with this. I just got this back recently. When the film opens, it shows her digging up skeletal remains of an infant, which you later find out was her child. It was deformed, so they thought it was the son of the devil. And I'm going to get into some heavy spoilers, because it's hard to review Giallos without actually getting into spoilers. So, if you're into Italian cinema and Giallos and you haven't seen this yet, I mean, I really like this and I recommend it. But if you haven't seen it, stop watching and go check it out. But yes, I would recommend this. If you're a Giallo fan, you gotta see it. So now carrying on. And she also makes these little wax voodoo dolls. Well, even before that, there's these three boys. Michele, Bruno, and a third one. They all like to go out to this house where it's a known place for prostitutes to bring men, or men bring prostitutes, either or. So they like to go and watch, and there's a sort of like the town simpleton, whose name I can't remember. They sort of taunt him because he's trying to watch, and then it shows her making these voodoo dolls, so you think she has something to do with it. And then we sort of see each boy get killed or be found. And it's just the whole town trying to not the whole town. Sorry, I just got done watching it and I didn't prep anything to say. So it was law enforcement sort of dealing with, okay, it's this guy because he was there. It's got to be this woman. Because there's this other guy like Francesco who deals with black magic. He sort of lives off the grid out in the hills. And it can get kind of confusing. This is one of the more convoluted Giallos I've seen. I mean, it's not It's not like Torso, or it's not, something that's easier, New York Ripper, but it is very good. And then there's this other woman, Patricia, played by Barbara Bouchet, or Boucher, not sure which way she pronounces it. She was also in Black Belly of the Tarantula, which I also own. I'll get to that eventually. She's like the pretty city woman, the rich woman from the city who's avoiding a drug scandal, so she's laying low in the city. And, she's very free-spirited. She hangs out naked. She wears very, high fashion clothes. She's considered the town slut by the townspeople. And, the movie makes it seem like she's the killer because she's always out and lying to cops about stuff. And, like, it seems like she kills one of the boys. And she has a thing with young boys. Like, this one boy that gets killed, she has a flat tire. She said, would you rather have a kiss or money? There's this other 6-year-old girl. Most of the victims are like 12-year-old boys. It's like one scene with this 6-year-old girl who's deaf and dumb. She has like the mind of a 3-year-old. She is the sister of the local priest Alberto. Like, she's carrying around a headless doll, and this woman Patricia is like, let's go get another, like, drags her away, even though the girl's moaning, like, I don't want to go with you. So they make it seem like she's the killer. Even this woman, Maracha, she's known as like a gypsy, a black magic gypsy. She doesn't confess to strangling them, which is how they're killed. She confesses to putting them to death by means of voodoo. But the press doesn't really put that out. They just put it out that she confessed. And then there is this sort of brutal yet beautifully directed scene where the dads of the 3 boys sort of, after she's been released for not really giving any real confession, she's cornered in the cemetery, and they all take turns beating her with a blunt stick and chains. And the gore effects look pretty good. I mean, this was one of Fulci's first gore films. Like, I think he did like comedies and romantic films and children's films before. The year before this, he did Lizard in a Woman's Skin. I think that was his first one. Before he went to like Giallo and horror films. So the gore effects on her are very well done. And they turn the radio up on their car really loud. And it's like this pop rock song. But as she's being beaten, the radio changes to this very a pretty sounding song. Because, it's an Italian film, so whenever something horrific happens, they put beautiful music over it. And then they sort of leave her to die, and then just as the song picks up, it shows her struggling and, like, stumbling to get out. And she crawls towards the road, and I mean, there's heavy traffic, and it shows people seeing her all bloody and shit, and no one stops to help her. And then she dies. But the murders continue, and there's this other guy, Andrea Martellini or something, that's the character's name, played by Thomas Millian, I'm guessing. He sort of works with that Patricia woman, the woman from the city, to figure this out. And he even, the last boy to be killed wasn't strangled, he was bludgeoned. And she's looking at he's a reporter, so she looks at a photo he took for the newspaper and notices a Donald Duck head. And she's like, well, the doll I bought for Mulvinia, the deaf and dumb girl, was a Donald Duck. And he's like, well, I found the head, it was just sitting there. So then they look around her house and they find a head of another doll. And they sort of put together that maybe she was a witness to some murders and it affected her, so she tried to recreate the murders with her dolls. And then they're like, well, they talk to her family, you know, the priest who runs like a boys group run by the church that each victim belonged to. And just lost what I was thinking. So they say, even though she's deaf and dumb, do you think there's any way we could try to ask her if she saw anything? And so the priest is like, oh, most definitely. Then his mother is like, well, something that puts that theory down. And then, of course, you know, you find out at the end, again, spoilers if you're still watching, the killer is the priest. Because he knows that the boys were going to watch prostitutes, and he wanted to preserve their innocence. You know, send them to heaven with a clean soul so they wouldn't sin when they got older. And once you find out, or as you're finding out that it's the priest, the movie gets really intense. Because you're with the reporter and the city woman. They think it's Malvina's crazy mother. Like, they think the mother of the deaf girl and the priest. So they're trying to find her. Alberto, the priest, calls. I haven't seen him anywhere. So they think, oh, she's taken her to kill her. And she goes up to this remote cabin on top of the mountains. And that's when Alberto comes in. Then you find out it's actually Alberto. And there's this intense scene where he's carrying her to the edge of this cliff. And, you know, our leads are like trying to make it up the mountain in time. The music opens up. The music's done by Ritz Ortolani, but it sounds like an Ennio Morricone score. Like, it sounds like unused music from The Thing that Tarantino used in Hateful Eight. Very big open violins, like very intense sounding music, dramatic music. You know, you hear his narration about his motives as to why he killed the boys. And the girl, who has the mind of a 3-year-old, keeps kissing him on the cheek and hugging him. And that's when he's about to throw over the cliff. Then a fight ensues between him and the reporter. And I know this was one of Fulci's first films, like with gore. And it was 1972. But, you know, it ends up, he falls off the cliff. And as he's falling, it's like, you can tell it's a rubber dummy. It's like you can tell it's a dummy. And as he's falling, his face hits rocks jutting up from the cliff and just destroys his face. The gore itself looks great, but you can tell it's a dummy. I mean, I don't fault it for that, given probably the budget, the time it was made, and probably the inexperience. I mean, saying Lucio Fulci's inexperience is crazy, but at that time. And then, you know, you get a beautiful scene where it shows the priest playing soccer with the boys that were killed, and you can get maybe his heart was in the right place, but also he's fucking insane and mad to think he has the right to kill them to preserve their innocence. And then once it shows him finally landing and it pans out, and then you get the credits. Because, you know, thing with Italian films is once the story's over, it fucking ends. There's no aftermath or anything. I know this review probably hasn't been very informative and pretty fast, and I didn't talk too much about it. But, I mean, I found this one of the more confusing ones just because it does take place in Italy and there is a lot of characters to follow. But I would say this is one of my favorite Giallos. Because, I mean, does a good job at taking a character that you know for most of the film, really making you think it's been these other people at different times throughout it. surprising you at the end. Again, I saw this years ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago. I knew it was the priest, but even watching it, and then I'm like, how did they get there? And you know, the deaf and dumb girl, pretty cute little girl, really makes you feel, you know, feels intense when you think she's gonna get killed, especially thrown off a fucking cliff. And the fact that she's deaf and dumb and, you know, partially retarded and stuff. And they even call her that in the movie. You know, you can tell she's a sweet girl. You feel, I mean, I'm not big on kids, and I was just like, oh god, that's terrible. I'm gonna throw her off a cliff. There's really only a couple scenes of gore, and they're pretty quick. Again, this is one of his earliest films with gore effects. I don't remember Lizard in a Woman's Skin that much, and I haven't got it back. I haven't bought it back again. So I'll have to check that out again before I review it. Like, it's been 6 or 7 years since I've seen this. But, so yeah, I know this hasn't been the best review, but I really do like Don't Torture a Duckling. I will put it up there with Torso, Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Deep Red. You know, I would put it up there as one of the best ones, one of my favorites. Definitely recommend it if you're really into giallos and Italian films. It's not really horror. It feels more horror than some other ones, at least in my opinion. In fact, you can kind of see here, like that mark on her stomach, that's from being whipped with a chain. But yeah, I mean, I've gone on long enough. Don't Torture a Duckling is pretty good. I enjoyed it. It's kind of confusing, but the red herrings and everything, the little bit of gore that's in it, the ending is pretty intense, well worth it. Pretty solid Fulci film. So for Room 237, that's all. Thank you.